Commander stood on the bridge of the Galactic Survey vessel Eternal Watcher, his 4 eyes scanning the holographic display that showed the third planet from the small yellow star. The planet appeared blue and green, with swirling white clouds covering roughly 60% of its surface. Water worlds were common enough, but this one had caught the attention of the Galactic Council's Expansion Committee for one simple reason. It was perfectly positioned in what the scientists called the habitable zone. "Initial scans complete, Commander," reported Lieutenant, her tentacles dancing across the bioneural interface. "The planet shows signs of primitive civilization. Basic electromagnetic signatures, rudimentary satellite networks, and what appears to be early space exploration technology." His mandibles clicked in dismissal. Another backward world filled with creatures barely smart enough to leave their own atmosphere. The galaxy was full of them. Species that took millions of years to develop simple spaceflight if they ever managed it at all. Most destroyed themselves long before reaching the stars. "What's the threat assessment?" asked, though he already knew the answer. "Negligible, sir. Their most advanced weapons appear to be chemical explosives and primitive nuclear devices. No plasma technology, no gravitational manipulation, no quantum weaponry. They're at least 1,000 cycles behind our most basic defensive systems." The commander nodded. Standard procedure for such worlds was simple. Catalog the resources, file a claim with the Galactic Council, and return in 50 cycles to begin extraction operations. By then, the primitive species would either have evolved enough to be useful as laborers, or they would have destroyed themselves, saving everyone the trouble of relocation. "File the standard report," ordered. "Mark the system for future resource extraction, priority level minimal." But something nagged at him as he stared at the planet. The electromagnetic signatures were unusual. Most primitive worlds showed scattered, random patterns of energy use. This planet showed something different. The energy signatures were organized, interconnected, forming vast networks that spanned entire continents. It suggested a level of planetary cooperation that was rare among species still bound to their home world. "Lieutenant, run a deeper scan on their communication networks. I want to know how they're coordinating across such distances." His tentacles paused over her controls. "Sir, regulations state that minimal threat worlds require only basic survey protocols. Extended scanning might be detected by their primitive sensors." "Their primitive sensors couldn't detect a cargo hauler at this distance," replied. "Run the scan." The deeper scan revealed something that made its primary eyes narrow. The planet wasn't just inhabited, it was swarming with activity. Massive cities housed billions of creatures. Transportation networks moved resources across vast distances with startling efficiency. Most surprising of all, the creatures had somehow managed to coordinate their activities across the entire planet without a central governing authority. "How many of them are there?" asked. "Approximately 8 billion individuals, sir, possibly more." The number hit like a physical blow. 8 billion individuals on a single planet. The most populous world in the Galactic Council hosted maybe 2 billion citizens, and that was considered overcrowded. How could such a primitive species sustain such massive numbers? "Are you certain of this reading?" "Confirmed, sir. And there's something else. They appear to be expanding their population rapidly while simultaneously increasing their resource consumption. Yet their environmental indicators remain relatively stable." This was impossible. Every species the Council had encountered followed the same pattern. Rapid expansion led to resource depletion, which led to population collapse or technological advancement. These creatures seemed to be doing both and neither simultaneously. "Show me their military structures," commanded. The hologram shifted, highlighting what their sensors identified as military installations. What saw made his throat sacs flutter in confusion. The creatures had divided themselves into multiple competing factions, each with its own military force. Yet instead of constant warfare, the expected result of such division, they maintained an uneasy balance of power that actually seemed to accelerate their technological development. "They're weaponizing competition," observed, her voice carrying a note of scientific fascination. "Each faction advances their technology to maintain parity with the others. It's creating an artificial evolutionary pressure." Had never heard of such a thing. Most species either unified before reaching the stars or destroyed themselves in factional wars. These humans, for that was what they called themselves, according to their intercepted communications, had found a third option. They remained divided but channeled that division into progress rather than destruction. "What about their space capabilities?" he asked. "Limited but growing rapidly. They've established a permanent orbital habitat and have sent exploration probes throughout their local system. Most remarkably, they've landed multiple expeditions on their planetary satellite and returned safely." Again, this conventional wisdom. Most species developed either space technology or advanced planetary infrastructure, but rarely both simultaneously. The resource requirements were simply too great, yet these humans had somehow managed to pursue both paths of development without crippling either. "Sir," said her voice tight with excitement, "you need to see this." The hologram zoomed in on what appeared to be a massive construction project in the void between the third and fourth planets. Hundreds of small craft swarmed around a growing framework of metal and composite materials. "What are they building?" "It appears to be some kind of solar collection array, sir. But the scale is enormous. If completed, it would harvest more energy than their entire planetary consumption." Felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. How long until completion? At their current rate of progress, maybe 50 cycles, possibly fewer. 50 cycles. That was exactly when the Council planned to return for resource extraction. These humans wouldn't be conveniently primitive when the time came. They would be something else entirely. "Update the threat assessment," ordered. "Sir." "Change it from negligible to undetermined, and flag this system for immediate Council review." His tentacles hesitated over the controls. "Commander, if we upgrade the threat level, the Council will send a full survey fleet. That's a significant resource commitment based on speculative analysis." "Look at those numbers again, Lieutenant. 8 billion individuals, massive industrial capacity, rapid technological advancement, and they're building stellar engineering projects. Does that sound negligible to you?" The truth wasn't sure what it sounded like. In 300 cycles of survey duty, he had never encountered anything like these humans. They broke every model the Council used for predicting species development. "There's one more thing, sir," said reluctantly. "I've been analyzing their entertainment transmissions, what they call movies and television. It might be relevant to our assessment." "Entertainment broadcasts? Why would primitive fiction be relevant?" "Because their fiction consistently depicts scenarios where their species encounters technologically superior alien civilizations. And in nearly every case, the humans find ways to defeat or at least survive contact with the superior force." His mandibles clicked in amusement. Primitive wish fulfillment. Every species creates myths about defeating more powerful enemies. "Yes, sir, but there's a pattern to their victories. They don't rely on superior technology or individual strength. They win through adaptability, cooperation under pressure, and willingness to sacrifice themselves for the group. Most telling, they consistently portray themselves as the underdogs who triumph through persistence and ingenuity." The amusement died in his throat. Those were exactly the traits these humans were displaying in reality. Massive cooperation without central authority, technological advancement through competition, sustainable growth despite primitive resource management. It was as if their entire species was organized around the principles their fiction celebrated. "Set course for the fleet rendezvous point," ordered. "Best possible speed." "Sir, we're scheduled to complete the survey of the outer system. There are 3 more planets to catalog." "The outer planets can wait. This information needs to reach the Council immediately." As the Eternal Watcher turned away from the human and engaged its quantum drive, stared at the dwindling blue dot on his display. Somewhere down there, 8 billion creatures were going about their daily lives, completely unaware that they had just become the most interesting species the Galactic Council had encountered in over 1,000 cycles. The journey to the fleet rendezvous point took 6 days. During that time, found himself obsessing over the human data. He ran the numbers again and again, looking for errors that would explain the impossible readings. 8 billion individuals, stellar engineering projects, sustainable resource consumption despite massive population, military competition that drove advancement rather than destruction. Every analysis confirmed the same conclusion. Humanity was developing along a completely unprecedented evolutionary path. Admiral received report with the same skeptical amusement that had initially felt. The admiral was an old-school military commander who had overseen dozens of primitive world surveys. In his experience, species were either threats or they weren't. There was no middle ground. Commander, I've read your report 3 times, and I still don't understand why you're requesting an immediate council review. So they're building some solar collectors. So they have a large population. The Empire conquered worlds with billions of inhabitants using nothing more than standard conquest protocols. With respect, Admiral, the Empire conquered worlds that had already reached technological maturity. The humans are advancing rapidly. By the time we return for extraction, they may be significantly more advanced than our current projections suggest. Admiral's throat sacs inflated with annoyance. Commander, they have nuclear weapons and chemical rockets. We have plasma cannons and faster-than-light travel. The technological gap is insurmountable. But had been studying the human development patterns for 6 days straight. Admiral, request permission to present a simulation. The holographic display activated, showing a timeline of human advancement over the past 100 cycles of their development. Look at their rate of progress. They went from powered flight to orbital capabilities in less than 1 cycle, from basic computers to global communication networks in half that time. Their rate of advancement isn't linear, it's exponential. Many species show rapid advancement periods, the Admiral replied dismissively. Yes, sir, but those advances usually come at the cost of other development areas. The humans are advancing on every front simultaneously. Military technology, space exploration, industrial capacity, population management, even artistic expression. They're not specializing, they're generalizing at an accelerated pace. The Admiral studied the timeline with growing interest. What are you proposing, Commander? I'm proposing that we don't know what we're dealing with. The human development model doesn't match any known pattern. We should establish a monitoring station in the outer system and observe them for several more cycles before making contact. The Council has already allocated this system for resource extraction. The colonization fleets are being prepared. You're asking me to delay a major operation based on speculation about primitive nuclear-age creatures. Had expected this response. Then let me make a different recommendation. Send a probe for closer observation. A single probe, completely stealthed. Let it monitor human development for 1 full cycle. If they remain primitive, we proceed as planned. If they advance beyond our projections, we reconsider our approach. Admiral considered this. A single stealth probe was a minimal resource commitment. If the commander was wrong, the only cost would be some wasted surveillance time. If he was right, the Council would have advance warning of a potential complication. Very well, Commander. I'll authorize the probe deployment. But I want you to understand something. The Council has never encountered a primitive species that posed a genuine threat to galactic civilization. The technological requirements alone make it impossible. These humans may be interesting, but they're still bound to a single planet with chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. The probe was deployed within hours, a tiny device no larger than a transport pod, but packed with the most advanced sensor technology in the galactic arsenal. It would position itself in the outer system and monitor human activity for the next cycle, transmitting data back to the fleet through quantum entanglement communicators. Watched the probe disappear into quantum space and felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. He had bought time for further observation, but he wasn't sure it would be enough. Something about the humans nagged at him, something beyond their unusual development patterns. It was their fiction that truly worried him. In all his years of survey duty, he had never encountered a species whose entertainment so consistently depicted survival scenarios against overwhelming odds. Most species created fantasy about conquest and domination. The humans seemed to fantasize about resistance and endurance. What kind of evolutionary pressure created a species that dreamed about fighting impossible battles? 3 weeks later, the probe sent its first detailed report and realized his concerns had been woefully inadequate. The humans hadn't just continued their development, they had accelerated it. The solar collection array was ahead of schedule and significantly larger than initial projections. More troubling, they had begun construction on what appeared to be a massive shipyard in orbit around their moon. But the real shock came when the probe detected launch signatures unlike anything in their previous observations. The humans had somehow developed a new propulsion system that increased their spacecraft velocity, by a factor of 10. Their most advanced ships were now capable of reaching the outer planets of their system in weeks rather than years. How is this possible? Admiral demanded when presented the new data. Our projections showed them 1,000 cycles behind our basic technology. They shouldn't be capable of this level of advancement. I believe we misunderstood their development model, replied. They're not following a linear technological progression. They're pursuing multiple parallel tracks and combining them in unexpected ways. This new propulsion system appears to be a fusion of their nuclear technology with electromagnetic field manipulation. It's primitive compared to our quantum drives, but it's also something we never developed because we moved directly from chemical propulsion to quantum systems. The Admiral stared at the display showing human spacecraft moving through their solar system at unprecedented speeds. What's their current threat level? Still significantly below our capabilities, but the gap is closing faster than any model predicted. If they maintain this rate of advancement, they could reach interstellar capability within 50 cycles. 50 cycles? The Admiral's voice carried a note of disbelief. That's impossible, the mathematical requirements alone. Unless they find a different solution to the mathematical requirements, interrupted. Sir, what if we've been thinking about this wrong? We've assumed that technological development follows a set pattern because that's what every species in the Council has done. But what if the humans find different solutions to the same problems? The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, studying the probe data. Finally, he spoke. Commander, I'm upgrading this system to active monitoring status. I want full surveillance, not just passive observation. And I want you to prepare a comprehensive analysis of human capabilities for immediate transmission to the Council. Yes, sir. And Commander, I want worst-case scenarios included in your analysis. What happens if these humans continue advancing at their current rate? What happens if they reach interstellar capability in 50 cycles instead of the projected 1,000? Had already been working on those projections, and the results kept him awake during his rest periods. If the humans maintained their current development pace, they wouldn't just reach interstellar capability. They would reach it as a unified species with a massive industrial base and a cultural framework that celebrated overcoming impossible odds. They would reach the stars as conquerors, not supplicants. The implications were staggering. The Galactic Council had maintained peace and stability for over 2,000 cycles based on a simple principle. Advanced civilizations were inherently peaceful because they had learned to manage resources efficiently and resolve conflicts diplomatically. War was wasteful and counterproductive for any species capable of interstellar travel. But the humans seemed to be developing advanced technology while maintaining the competitive drives that characterized primitive species. They were becoming more capable without becoming more peaceful. As prepared his report for the Council, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was documenting the emergence of something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans weren't just another primitive species destined for eventual incorporation into the Council. They were something entirely new. The Council chamber on Galactic Station Prime had seen many debates over its 3,000-cycle history, but none quite like this one. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their environmental pods, watching the holographic display that showed the human and its rapidly expanding sphere of activity. Counselor of the Crystalline Collective spoke first, her melodious voice carrying across the chamber through the universal translators. Honored colleagues, we have reviewed Commander's report multiple times. While the human rate of advancement is unusual, it hardly constitutes a threat to galactic stability. Their technology remains centuries behind our most basic systems. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Most council members had dealt with primitive species before. The pattern was always the same. Initial rapid advancement followed by technological plateaus as the species encountered increasingly complex engineering challenges. No species had ever maintained exponential growth beyond the early stellar development phase. But Admiral had requested permission to address the Council directly, an unusual step for a military commander. He stood before the assembly, his four arms gesturing toward the display. Honored counselors, I understand your skepticism. I shared it until I reviewed the complete surveillance data. The humans are not following normal development patterns in any area. Allow me to present 3 specific concerns that require immediate attention. The display shifted to show human population centers across their planet. First, population dynamics. The humans currently support 8 billion individuals on a single world. Our largest population centers house 2 billion across multiple planets. Yet human resource consumption per individual is actually decreasing as their population grows. They are becoming more efficient, not less, as they expand. Counselor of the Hive Minds interjected, population efficiency often increases with technological advancement. This is not unusual. You're correct, Counselor, but examine their industrial output. The display changed to show massive manufacturing complexes, mining operations, and energy production facilities. Their industrial capacity is growing faster than their population. They are producing exponentially more resources while using exponentially fewer resources per individual. The mathematics suggest they are approaching post-scarcity economics while still bound to a single planet. The chamber fell quiet. Post-scarcity economics was considered the hallmark of mature galactic civilizations. Species typically achieved it only after developing interstellar capability and accessing the resources of multiple star systems. Admiral continued. Second concern, military organization. The humans maintain multiple competing military forces, yet these forces regularly cooperate on shared projects. They have somehow weaponized competition while maintaining species-wide collaboration. I have no model for this behavior. Counselor N of the Peaceful Synthesis raised a tentacle. Admiral, competitive military structures inevitably lead to conflict. History shows us this repeatedly. That's what our models predict, yes, but observe this. The display showed a timeline of human conflicts over the past 100 cycles. Human warfare has actually decreased in frequency and intensity as their military capabilities have increased. They appear to be channeling competitive drives into technological advancement rather than territorial expansion. Impossible, declared Counselor or of the warrior clans. No species maintains military strength without using it for conquest. Military power demands expression. Admiral had expected this response from the warrior clan's representative. With respect, Counselor, the humans appear to have found expression for military power through exploration and engineering challenges rather than conquest. They are using war-making capabilities to build stellar engineering projects. The third display appeared, showing the massive solar collection array and the orbital shipyard around the human moon. Which brings me to my final concern, their approach to stellar engineering. They are building infrastructure projects that match early-stage construction while still using chemical and nuclear propulsion. They are pursuing engineering solutions that our own development models suggest are impossible at their technological level. Counselor's crystalline form shimmered with skepticism. Admiral, you're suggesting that these humans have discovered some alternative path to advanced civilization. In 3,000 cycles, the Council has over 10,000 species. All of them followed predictable development patterns. Why would humans be different? I don't know why they're different, Admiral admitted. But I know they are different. Our surveillance probe has documented technological advancement in the past 50 days that exceeds our projections for the next 50 cycles. He gestured, and the display showed recent probe data. They have developed atmospheric processors that can terraform a planet in decades rather than centuries. They have created artificial intelligence systems that rival our basic computational networks. Most remarkably, they have begun experimental work on faster-than-light communication using quantum entanglement principles. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. Quantum entanglement communication was considered extremely advanced technology, typically developed only by species with centuries of interstellar experience. You're certain of this data? Demanded Counselor Al of the Ancient Reaches. The probe data has been multiple times. The humans are experimenting with quantum communication, and their preliminary results suggest they understand the underlying principles better than our original projections indicated possible. Counselor's form brightened with what her species expressed as intense thought. If the humans develop faster-than-light communication before faster-than-light travel, they could coordinate interstellar operations across vast distances. They could potentially manage stellar engineering projects spanning multiple star systems. Exactly, Admiral confirmed. They could become an interstellar civilization without ever leaving their home system, simply by building increasingly large projects and coordinating them through quantum communication networks. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. Traditional galactic development required species to spread across multiple star systems, which naturally limited their ability to coordinate large-scale projects. A species that could coordinate stellar engineering across interstellar distances would have capabilities unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. Counselor's hive mind hummed with internal discussion before speaking. Admiral, what specific threat do you believe these humans pose to galactic stability? Admiral had been dreading this question because he wasn't sure he could answer it satisfactorily. Counselors, I'm not certain they pose a direct threat, but I am certain that they represent something unprecedented. Their development model suggests they could reach technological parity with Council civilizations within a relatively short. The question is, what kind of civilization will they be when they reach that parity? Explain your concerns more specifically, demanded Counselor Orr. Their cultural transmissions suggest a species that views conflict as natural and necessary for growth. Their entertainment consistently depicts scenarios where they overcome superior opponents through persistence, adaptability, and willingness to sacrifice for group survival. They appear to be culturally programmed for resistance against superior forces. Counselor and's tentacles waved in dismissal. Admiral, many primitive species create fantasy about defeating superior enemies. It's psychological compensation for their technological limitations. Perhaps, but the humans are rapidly eliminating their technological limitations while retaining their cultural programming. What happens when a species programmed for resistance against superior forces becomes a superior force themselves? The question created an uncomfortable silence in the chamber. The Council's peace had been maintained for partly because advanced species naturally developed peaceful philosophies. War became inefficient once species achieved interstellar capability and resource abundance. But a species that achieved advanced capabilities while maintaining aggressive cultural patterns would be unprecedented. Counselor Al spoke carefully. Admiral, are you recommending that the Council consider these humans a potential threat requiring preemptive action? I'm recommending that we recognize them as an unknown factor requiring careful monitoring and possibly direct contact to assess their intentions. Direct contact? Counselor's form dimmed with concern. Admiral, first contact protocols require extensive preparation and Council approval. The process typically takes hundreds of cycles of observation and cultural analysis. Counselors, we may not have hundreds of cycles. At their current rate of advancement, the humans could develop interstellar capability within decades. If we wait for standard first contact protocols, we may find ourselves contacting a peer civilization rather than a primitive one. Admiral gestured to the display one final time. I respectfully submit that the humans represent either an unprecedented opportunity for peaceful integration with a uniquely capable species, or an unprecedented threat to galactic stability. Either way, they require immediate and careful attention rather than standard primitive world protocols. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Council members argued over threat assessments, development projections, and the precedent that direct contact with a pre-interstellar species would set. Some advocated for continued observation, others for immediate resource extraction before the humans became more advanced, and a few for attempting communication to gauge human intentions. Finally, Counselor called for order. Honored colleagues, we face a decision that could affect galactic civilization for. I propose we establish a special commission to develop recommendations for dealing with the human situation. This commission will have access to all surveillance data and the authority to recommend any course of action, including early contact if deemed necessary. The vote was closer than Admiral had expected. 24 in favor, 20 in opposition, 3 abstentions. But it was enough to establish the commission and delay any immediate action while the situation was studied further. As the council session ended and representatives returned to their environmental pods, Admiral felt both relief and apprehension. He had succeeded in getting the humans recognized as a special case requiring careful consideration rather than routine extraction. But he had also started a process that could lead to decisions far beyond his authority or expertise. 3 days later, he received a priority transmission from the surveillance probe that made his throat sacs flutter with alarm. The humans had launched their first interstellar probe. It was primitive by Council standards, barely achieving 1% of light speed using a combination of nuclear pulse propulsion and electromagnetic acceleration. But it was aimed at the nearest star system and equipped with what appeared to be experimental quantum communication arrays. The probe would take over 400 cycles to reach its destination, but the quantum communication arrays meant the humans could potentially maintain real-time contact with it across interstellar distances. They were attempting to establish their first interstellar communication network decades ahead of their projected timeline. Admiral immediately transmitted the data to the newly formed commission with a priority flag. The humans weren't just advancing rapidly, they were actively reaching for the stars. In the depths of space between the human star system and the galactic core, the surveillance probe continued its observations, recording every detail of human expansion and advancement. Its quantum transmitters sent continuous data streams back to the fleet, documenting the emergence of something unprecedented in galactic history. The probe's artificial intelligence was sophisticated enough to recognize patterns and make basic projections. Based on current trends, it calculated that the humans would develop faster-than-light travel within 30 to 40 cycles. They would achieve interstellar colonization capability within 50 cycles. Most remarkably, they would do so while maintaining a unified planetary civilization with massive industrial capacity and rapid technological advancement. When the humans reached the stars, they would arrive not as desperate refugees or cautious explorers, but as a fully developed civilization with the resources and technology to establish themselves immediately in any system they chose to colonize. The probe's calculations also suggested something else, something that would have alarmed its creators if they had programmed it to consider such possibilities. The humans were developing capabilities that would make them extremely difficult to control or contain once they achieved interstellar status. Their distributed manufacturing capabilities meant they could establish industrial bases rapidly on any suitable world. Their quantum communication research meant they could coordinate activities across vast distances without vulnerable physical infrastructure. Their competitive military culture meant they would be prepared for conflict, while their cooperative social structures meant they could sustain coordinated resistance indefinitely. The probe had no emotional programming, but if it had been capable of concern, it would have been deeply worried about what the humans represented for galactic stability. Instead, it simply continued recording and transmitting, documenting the day-by-day advancement of a species that refused to follow the established patterns of galactic civilization. Back in the human system, humanity continued its rapid expansion, completely unaware that they had become the subject of intense scrutiny by an advanced galactic civilization. They built their orbital habitats, expanded their solar collection arrays, and sent their experimental probes toward distant stars, driven by the same curiosity and ambition that had carried them from primitive hunters to planetary dominators in an incredibly short evolutionary. In the research facilities orbiting Earth, human scientists worked on projects that would have astounded their galactic observers. Experimental faster-than-light drives based on theoretical physics that wouldn't be developed by most council species for centuries after achieving interstellar capability. Artificial intelligence systems that approached true consciousness. Biotechnology that could adapt human physiology for life in environments ranging from gas-giant atmospheres to the vacuum of space itself. The humans were preparing themselves not just for interstellar travel, but for the colonization of environments that most galactic species couldn't survive even with advanced technology. They were becoming adaptable on a biological level while maintaining their technological momentum. Dr. Sarah stood in the observation deck of Orbital Research Station 3, watching the construction crews work on the latest addition to humanity's growing space infrastructure. The massive ring taking shape before her would house over 1 million people when complete, making it larger than most cities on Earth. "The rotation stabilizers are ahead of schedule," reported her assistant, Dr. James Park. "We should have artificial gravity online within 6 months." Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on something else visible through the observation windows. In the distance, almost lost among the stars, was the tiny spark of humanity's first interstellar probe. It was barely visible even with enhanced imaging, but it represented something unprecedented in human history. "James, do you ever think about what we might find out there?" Dr. Park followed her gaze toward the distant probe. Statistically, we should find life. The universe is too big for us to be alone. I'm not talking about microbes or even simple ecosystems. I'm talking about other civilizations, other species that might be watching us right now. It was a question that had obsessed human philosophers and scientists for centuries. Were there other intelligent species in the galaxy? If so, why hadn't they made contact? The silence of space seemed to suggest either that intelligent life was incredibly rare, or that advanced civilizations had some reason for avoiding contact with primitive species. "What do you think we'd do if we encountered a more advanced civilization?" Sarah asked. Dr. Park considered the question seriously. "Probably what we've always done when we encounter something more advanced than us. We'd study it, learn from it, and figure out how to either compete with it or surpass it." Sarah smiled. "You make it sound like we'd treat advanced aliens the same way we treated the introduction of computers or space travel." "Why would it be different? Humans don't have a history of accepting permanent inferiority to anyone or anything. We adapt, we overcome, we improve. It's what we do." It was a very human perspective, Sarah reflected. Most species, when encountering something significantly more advanced than themselves, would probably seek accommodation or submission. Humans had a cultural tendency to view any challenge as something to be overcome rather than something to be accepted. She wondered if that trait would serve humanity well when they finally encountered other galactic civilizations, or if it would make them dangerous in ways they couldn't yet understand. Far above the orbital station, invisible to human sensors, the Galactic Surveillance Probe recorded their conversation and transmitted it back to the Council Commission for analysis. The probe's artificial intelligence noted the human assumption that they would compete with rather than submit to superior civilizations, and flagged it as culturally significant data. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place. The first sign that humanity was no longer alone came not from their deep space monitoring stations or their interstellar probe, but from an automated mining operation in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Mining Platform 7 was a fully automated facility, operated by artificial intelligence systems and maintained by robotic crews. It had been processing asteroids for rare earth metals for 3 years without human supervision, sending regular status updates to Earth and delivering processed materials to the orbital construction yards on schedule. When the platform's AI detected an anomalous object approaching from the outer system, its first assumption was equipment malfunction. The object was too small to be an asteroid and too fast to be space debris, yet too large and too regular in its movement patterns to be a natural phenomenon. The AI spent 14 hours running diagnostics on its sensor arrays before concluding that the readings were accurate. Something artificial was approaching from beyond the orbit of Neptune, moving at speeds that exceeded anything in humanity's current technological arsenal by a factor of 10. The Discovery Protocol activated immediately. Within minutes, every major space monitoring facility in the solar system was tracking the object. Within hours, the information had reached the emergency session of the United Earth Space Council. Director Elizabeth stood before the holographic display showing the trajectory of the unknown object, her mind racing through possibilities. As the head of Earth's unified space program, she had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, but now that it was actually happening, she felt woefully unprepared. "Analysis confirms the object is artificial," reported Dr. Singh, the chief of research. "Its trajectory is too precise and its acceleration profile too consistent for natural origin. We're looking at technology." "Whose technology?" asked General, representing Earth's unified defense forces. "Unknown. The propulsion signatures don't match anything in our databases. The object appears to be using some form of reactionless drive. It's accelerating without ejecting propellant." Director felt her stomach clench. Reactionless drives were theoretical constructs that human scientists had been trying to develop for decades. If someone else already had them, humanity was dealing with a technological gap far larger than their most pessimistic projections. Time to closest approach. Approximately 18 hours at current velocity. The object is slowing down as it approaches, which suggests it intends to stop rather than simply pass through our system. General leaned forward. "Are we looking at an invasion force?" Negative, Dr. Singh replied immediately. The object is approximately 10 meters in length and shows no signs of weapons systems or combat configuration. If this is representative of their technology level, a single ship this size could likely neutralize our entire space-based infrastructure without needing specialized weapons. The brutal honesty of the assessment hung heavy in the room. If they were dealing with a civilization capable of casual interstellar travel, military resistance would be futile. Humanity's most advanced weapons were chemical explosives and nuclear devices. Their best spacecraft required months to travel between planets. Whatever had built the approaching object operated on a completely different technological level. "So what are our options?" Director asked. "Diplomatic contact," suggested Dr. Sarah, who had been transported down from Orbital Research Station 3 for the emergency session. "If they're here for observation or first contact, we should respond appropriately." "And if they're here for conquest?" General asked. Doctor looked uncomfortable. "Then our response probably doesn't matter, but if they wanted to conquer us, they probably wouldn't need to approach this slowly or this openly. They could have simply arrived and taken whatever they wanted." Director made the decision that would change human history. Prepare a first contact package. Basic mathematics, physics, chemistry, include samples of our art, music, and literature. Broadcast it on all frequencies and beam it directly at the approaching object. "Director," General protested, "we don't know their intentions. Broadcasting our location and capabilities could be giving them intelligence they could use against us." "General, they're already in our solar system using technology we can't match. They know our location and they can probably assess our capabilities better than we can. The only question is whether we respond as a civilized species capable of communication or as a primitive species that needs to be managed." The first contact package was assembled in 6 hours, drawing on decades of preparation and theoretical work. It contained mathematical constants, scientific principles, artistic achievements, and cultural information that the world's best hoped would convey humanity's peaceful intentions and intellectual capabilities. The response came faster than anyone had expected. The alien object had been monitoring Earth's communication networks since entering the solar system. Its artificial intelligence had learned human languages, analyzed their cultural broadcasts, and assessed their technological capabilities with efficiency that would have impressed its creators. When the first contact package arrived, the probe's response was immediate and comprehensive. The return transmission contained mathematical proofs that extended beyond human knowledge, scientific data about the galaxy that no Earth-based civilization could have discovered, and most remarkably, a message in perfect English. "Greetings to the humans of the third planet. I am an automated probe of the Galactic Council, dispatched to observe your species' development. Your advancement has exceeded all projections. The Council wishes to establish communication to assess your intentions and capabilities before you achieve interstellar travel." Director stared at the message, reading it 3 times before the implications fully registered. "They've been watching us." "For how long?" Doctor asked. The probe's next transmission answered the question. "This probe has been observing human development for 112 days. The Galactic Council has been aware of your species for approximately 1 of your years. Your rate of technological advancement has caused significant debate among Council members regarding appropriate contact protocols." Dr. Singh raised an important question. "How many species are in this Galactic Council?" The Council currently includes 47 distinct species across approximately 12,000 star systems. Humanity would be the 48th species, pending evaluation of your suitability for galactic civilization. The number hit the room like a physical blow. 47 species across 12,000 star systems. Humanity had spent centuries wondering if they were alone in the universe, only to discover they were part of a galaxy teeming with intelligent life. "What does evaluation for suitability mean?" Director asked carefully. "The Council must determine whether humanity poses a threat to galactic stability before permitting your expansion beyond your home system. Species that demonstrate aggressive or expansionist tendencies are typically contained until they develop more peaceful philosophies." General's face darkened. "Contained how?" "Methods vary depending on the species and the level of threat they represent. Peaceful containment typically involves technological suppression and resource limitations. More aggressive species may require more direct intervention. The threat was delivered with perfect politeness, but it was unmistakably a threat. Humanity was being given a choice: prove they were peaceful and be allowed to join galactic civilization, or be contained on Earth indefinitely. Director felt the weight of speaking for the entire human species. What would we need to do to prove our suitability? The Council requires evidence that humans can integrate peacefully with galactic civilization without destabilizing existing power structures or threatening established species. This typically requires demonstrated commitment to non-aggression and cooperative development. Doctor spoke up. What about species that refuse to be contained? The probe's response came after a slight delay, as if its artificial intelligence was calculating the appropriate level of honesty. No species has successfully refused containment. The technological gap makes resistance futile. General's hands clenched into fists. So we submit or we're crushed. The Council prefers cooperation to coercion. Most species find integration beneficial once they understand the advantages of galactic civilization. Director realized they were negotiating for humanity's future with an artificial intelligence that held the power to end human independence with a simple report to its creators. Every word mattered, every response would be analyzed and evaluated for signs of human intentions. We would like to learn more about the Council and what integration would involve, she said carefully. Council integration provides access to advanced technology, interstellar trade networks, and peaceful coexistence with 47 distinct civilizations. In exchange, new species accept Council authority in matters of galactic security and resource allocation. And if we're not ready for integration, species development can be guided to prepare them for eventual integration. The process typically requires several generations, but ensures successful adaptation to galactic civilization. Several generations of guided development. Director understood what that meant. Several generations of being treated like children under alien supervision until humanity learned to think and behave the way the Council considered appropriate. Can we have time to discuss this with our governments and people? Of course. The Council understands the significance of this decision for your species. However, time is limited. Human technological advancement continues at rates that concern many Council members. A decision should be reached within one of your solar cycles. 1 year. Humanity had 1 year to decide whether to submit to alien authority or face the consequences of resistance. After the probe moved to a monitoring position in the outer solar system, the emergency session continued for 18 straight hours. Representatives from every major Earth government joined the discussion through quantum communication links, creating the largest political assembly in human history. The debates were fierce and immediate. Some advocated immediate acceptance of Council authority, arguing that the technological benefits would accelerate human development by centuries. Others demanded resistance, insisting that humanity had never submitted to any external authority and shouldn't start now. Doctor presented the scientific perspective. We need to understand what we're dealing with. This probe alone demonstrates technology beyond our current capabilities. Fighting a war against an enemy with faster-than-light travel and reactionless drives would be like fighting jets with spears. General represented the military viewpoint. Throughout human history, we've faced technologically superior enemies and found ways to overcome them. Technology isn't everything. Determination, adaptability, and willingness to sacrifice can overcome technological disadvantages. Director found herself caught between pragmatism and principle. The question isn't whether we can resist them. The question is whether we should. What kind of civilization do we want to become? One that submits to superior force, or one that maintains its independence regardless of cost? The debate revealed fundamental divisions in human philosophy that had been largely theoretical until now. Some humans valued survival and advancement above independence, while others valued freedom above security. Some believed cooperation with superior civilizations was wisdom, while others saw it as cowardice. But as the hours passed, a different perspective began to emerge from an unexpected source. The younger generation of scientists and engineers who had grown up during humanity's rapid space expansion. Dr. Park, representing the orbital research stations, spoke for many when he said, "Maybe we're asking the wrong question. Instead of asking whether we should resist or submit, maybe we should ask how we can use this situation to accelerate our own development." "Explain," Director requested. "They're offering us access to advanced technology and galactic civilization. What if we accept their offer, learn everything we can, and use that knowledge to develop our own independent capabilities? We don't have to choose between submission and resistance. We could choose adaptation and eventual competition." It was a distinctly human approach to the problem. Rather than accepting either submission or futile resistance, find a way to turn the situation into an opportunity for advancement. Learn from the superior enemy, adapt their advantages, and eventually surpass them. General smiled grimly. "You're talking about playing along until we're strong enough to assert our independence." "I'm talking about doing what humans have always done when faced with challenges we couldn't overcome directly," Dr. Park replied. "We learn, we adapt, we improve, and we find ways to win." The approach had risks. The Council might detect humanity's true intentions and respond with immediate containment. Or human nature might make it impossible to maintain the deception long enough to develop competitive capabilities. But it also offered the possibility of achieving both immediate survival and long-term independence, which neither pure submission nor immediate resistance could provide. Director called for a preliminary vote from the global representatives. The results were closer than she had expected. 53% in favor of accepting Council authority while secretly developing independent capabilities, 32% in favor of immediate resistance, 15% in favor of genuine submission. The narrow majority suggested that most of humanity was willing to try the adaptive approach, but a significant minority preferred direct confrontation regardless of consequences. "The decision is too important to be made by a simple majority vote," Director announced. "We need genuine consensus, or we risk internal conflict that could destroy us regardless of what the aliens do." She proposed a 6-month period of intensive debate, analysis, and planning. During that time, humanity would continue developing their space infrastructure and military capabilities while preparing detailed plans for whichever approach they ultimately chose. The alien probe continued its observations, noting the human response to first contact with great interest. Its artificial intelligence had been programmed to assess species psychology and predict behavioral patterns, but the human response many of its models. Most species faced with overwhelming technological superiority chose either immediate submission or desperate resistance. The humans appeared to be considering a third option that none of the probe's creators had anticipated: strategic deception combined with long-term competition planning. The probe transmitted its observations back to the Council with a priority flag. The humans were demonstrating exactly the kind of adaptability and competitive thinking that had made them a concern in the first place. They were proving that they would be dangerous allies and even more dangerous enemies. In the months that followed, humanity threw itself into the most intensive period of technological development in their history. Every research facility, every orbital laboratory, every experimental project received unlimited funding and resources. If they were going to compete with galactic civilization, they needed to close the technological gap as rapidly as possible. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Doctor's team at Orbital Research Station 3 had been analyzing the probe's transmissions for technological information. Hidden in the carrier wave frequencies were traces of the quantum entanglement communication system that allowed the probe to transmit data across interstellar distances instantaneously. "We can't replicate their technology exactly," Doctor reported to the Emergency Council, "but we can understand the principles. And once we understand the principles, we can develop our own versions." It was the first step toward making humanity competitive with galactic civilization. They wouldn't simply copy alien technology, they would understand it, improve on it, and eventually surpass it. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humans decided they refused to accept permanent technological inferiority. As Earth's orbital facilities worked around the clock to develop competitive technologies, humanity's first interstellar probe continued its journey toward the nearest star system, carrying experimental quantum communication arrays and a message that would reach galactic civilization whether the Council approved or not. Humanity was about to announce itself to the galaxy on its own terms, ready or not. The probe in the outer solar system detected the quantum signatures from the human experimental systems and immediately transmitted an alert back to the Council. The humans weren't just planning resistance. They were actively developing the technologies that would make resistance possible. The galaxy was about to become a far more dangerous place, and it was entirely humanity's fault.